Chapter 5135. Such a huge castle was emitting a desolate and silent atmosphere. Just as she neared the stone door, she could feel a strong malicious intent coming from within. Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted. Something is wrong with this castle. That strong malice was really too chilling. Yiqing Luo pursed her red lips. Her intuition had always been very sharp. Although she could feel the malicious intent, but she inexplicably felt this intent wasn't targeted at her. Instead it felt an inexplicable attraction was attracting her to step into the castle. This feeling made Yiqing Luo's heart feel uneasy. What exactly was hidden in this castle? Was it the secluded palace's scheme? Or something else? Yiqing Luo's thoughts were in a whirl. Finally, her figure flashed as she displayed her teleportation secret technique and entered the castle. The white light flickered, but she didn't see the young lady's figure. After Yiqing Luo entered the castle, she began to study the layout and topography of the castle. Her line of sight wandered around quickly. She originally thought that there must be something hidden in this castle. But after one round, there wasn't a single human presence in this castle. Not a single living thing could be seen. Only the cold yin qi that came from all directions corroded her breathing. This castle was huge. It was so huge that Yiqing Luo spent an entire hour before she could remember all the topography in her mind. Finally, she stood in the middle of the castle, in the largest and most spacious main hall. The deathly silent atmosphere didn't slow down because of her arrival. On the contrary, the atmosphere was even stronger. Outside of this cold yin qi, Yiqing Luo hadn't noticed anything strange. No, this castle's malicious intent is too strong, and the yin qi is not something that can be formed overnight. Old Man Song's tone was solemn and vigilant. Don't let your guard down. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she replied, I know. Her words had just ended. Her vision fell onto her wrist. Earlier, she didn't seem to be hallucinating. The moment Old Man Song opened his mouth to remind her, the azure dew bracelet inexplicably burned her hand. Although it was very slight, but she still felt it. Old Man Song, do you feel it? Yiqing Luo clenched her fist tightly as she stared at the azure dew bracelet. Old Man Song was confused. Feel what? As soon as he opened his mouth, the azure dew bracelet burned again. However, Old Man Song clearly did not notice. Yiqing Luo's fingertips rested on the azure dew bracelet. Her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. The azure dew bracelet to this place. There was a reaction. Yiqing Luo told this discovery to Old Man Song. Old Man Song was somewhat surprised. As the guardian spirit of the azure dew bracelet, he didn't feel the slightest bit of strangeness. Yiqing Luo muttered to herself for a moment, why don't you come out in your spiritual form? Perhaps your spiritual form will be able to sense this castle. This castle that appeared out of nowhere. It was impossible for it to be like what it seemed on the surface. There were no creatures at all. There must be something hidden behind this castle. I'll give it a try. Following Old Man Song's words, a wisp of white smoke lingered above Yiqing Luo's head. The white-bearded, white-browed, white-robed old man circled around her twice in a transparent manner. Old Man Song was about to speak. Suddenly his expression froze. That white smoke-like spiritual form fiercely flew towards the center of the main hall, towards a black iron mirror hanging on the wall. Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo immediately flew up and stretched out her hand to pull Old Man Song. Her finger passed through Old Man Song's body, and Old Man Song absorbed the black mirror at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 5136. Yiqing Luo didn't have time to think and pounced towards the direction where Old Man Song disappeared. The moment she was sucked into the black mirror, on Yiqing Luo's body, all the vast aqua divine armaments were emitting a dazzling glow. The light from the azure dew artifacts formed a line of intertwining light that enveloped Yiqing Luo. Then all the light rushed towards the azure dew bracelet on Yiqing Luo's wrist. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt her chest was heavy, as if there were countless forces squeezing her internal organs. At the same time, she could sense a strong sense of malice. It was getting closer and more obvious. Yiqing Luo's gaze followed Old Man Song's spiritual body closely. Her fingers pressed on the azure dew bracelet, desperately calling Old Man Song back. But the moment she entered the black mirror, Yiqing Luo was stunned. What entered her eyes was still the main hall of the ancient castle. The exact same main hall. Even the furnishings and decorations were exactly the same. The only difference was, in the center of the main hall, a dense black light gathered. That black light was extremely dazzling. Old Man Song was currently suspended above the black light, unable to move. However, there was only doubt on Old Man Song's face, no expression of pain. "Old Man Song, are you all right?" Yiqing Luo worriedly asked. "I'm fine, just can't move." Old Man Song tried to move his spiritual body, but his limbs seemed to be pressed by something heavy, making him only float in the air. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips, her gaze fell on the black light wrapped around Old Man Song's limbs. She could clearly see, in that ball of black light which was below Old Man Song, a figure was faintly discernible. The black light was too dazzling, but it couldn't escape the density. She could barely see clearly that the figure was bent over, head hung low, as if powerless in the black light. Who was this person? Yiqing Luo congealed her eyes and looked over seriously. At the same time, the black light rippled, revealing that figure. That was a man. A man dressed in a black robe had his head lowered, hanging there powerlessly. His messy long hair covered his face. What attracted Yiqing Luo's attention was, the man's limbs were bound by huge iron chains. The ends of the chains bound the man's limbs. On the other side there was a black light hidden in the void. Yiqing Luo could even see that in that black glow in the void, numerous iron chains were intertwined, as though they were trying to bind the man completely within. Yiqing Luo stared at that man in a daze as she was still in a daze. The secret hidden in this ancient castle was probably the man in the black iron mirror. Because she could clearly feel it. The strong malice she had sensed all this time. It was coming from the man's body. Although the man seemed to be unconscious. However, the killing intent and malice on his body could not be concealed. Furthermore, why would this man attract Old Man Song's spiritual body? Last look. Vast water divine artifact. Old Man Song's shocked voice called Yiqing Luo back from her contemplation. She composed herself, raised her hand, and lowered her eyes to look at the azure water's silk chain on her wrist. He could see the azure water ring and the azure water chain intertwining with each other. As well as the other azure water's divine artifact's power, all surged towards the azure water's bracelet. What's going on? Yiqing Luo looked at the azure water's bracelet that was being irrigated by the divine artifact's power, and was somewhat stunned. This was the first time she had seen such a situation. Azure water's divine artifact seems to be related to this array. Old Man Song said. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5137. And the connection was huge. This was the first time the Azure Aqua Divine Relic had such a big reaction. So, Old Man Song would be imprisoned in this black glow. Was it also because of this reason? Wait, Yiqing Luo was startled. Array? Yes, this is an array. Old Man Song's expression was very solemn, half squinting his eyes, dangerous and deep. The person below, those iron chains wrapped around his body, forming a pattern, it is a complicated array. Old Man Song paused, his tone became even heavier. Moreover, it is an extremely ancient array, so ancient that, at least during the era of the Divine Emperor, it could only be set up. This array is sealing this man. Is it a seal? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly, her charming eyes fixated on the man in the black glow. There was a strange feeling in her heart. Why? That man seemed to be beckoning her to walk over. Obviously his whole body was emitting a thick malicious intent. But Yiqing Luo still felt that that kind of malicious intent couldn't affect her at all. He didn't want to hurt her. Yiqing Luo's pale little hand pressed on her heart. Her slender brows, knitted even tighter, wrinkling into a ball. Why would she have this kind of feeling? Was it that man who was sealed? Up to mischief? Yiqing Luo suppressed the impulse in her heart, then bit by bit she approached the man a few steps. Closer and closer. On her wrist, that blossoming cherry blossom azure aqua bracelet, flashing with the power of the divine weapon, became stronger and stronger. Whoosh, a ball of profound light like a raging flame, suddenly gushed out, instantly spreading over the entire castle's main hall. In a split second, the main hall was shrouded in a layer of strong red light. At the same time, the strong red light easily dispersed the thick black glow around the man's body. Under the red light like a raging fire, in the black light revealed the man's hanging figure. She could also clearly see, under the cover of that messy long hair, half of his side profile. Yiqing Luo didn't know how she should describe the feeling after seeing the man clearly. From the man's body, Yiqing Luo only felt a kind of bone-piercing cold aura, and also carried a thick malicious intent, pouncing on her. Just like, this man carried too much blood and slaughter on his back. Only then could it create such a deep and dense qi. Yiqing Luo could only see the man's side profile. However, one could tell that the man was very handsome. However, under the crisscrossing of the red and black lights, his skin seemed a little cold and pale. Who was this man? Why would it be sealed here by a formation? Yiqing Luo also asked this question. Old man Song moved his head with some difficulty and looked down. I don't know either. I've never seen this kind of black light before, and the aura emanating from the man's body. It was also very unfamiliar. Yiqing Luo glanced at her wrist, her slender fingers lightly touched the azure dew bracelet. The petals were like blooming cherry blossoms, contrasting perfectly with the girl's fair skin. She pursed her lips and said, I have a guess. Old man Song, Azure dew bracelet. Can it undo this formation? Yiqing Luo hesitated for a moment but still said it out. Old man Song was silent for a moment. The azure dew artifact's reaction is indeed very strong. Even I have no way to control my spiritual body to return to the azure dew bracelet. It's very possible that this formation is attracting the azure dew artifact's power. Trash 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. 44,143 Dextop. Chapter 5138. So, this ancient castle had been sending her a summoning signal. It was hope. Could she use the azure dew artifact to undo his seal? That meant this man could possibly have consciousness. With this thought, Yiqing Luo's gaze towards the man became a bit more probing. She took another step towards the man and opened her mouth. You can hear me, right? The man in the crisscrossing black and red light didn't move at all. He is sealed here by the array, so he should have no consciousness and can't hear. Old man Song opened his mouth to explain. The words just left his mouth. An extremely intense malicious intent, carrying an irresistible oppressive force, directly struck towards Yiqing Luo. Within the malicious intent, killing intent burst forth. But Yiqing Luo didn't feel vigilant against that killing intent, or a feeling that made her whole body tremble. That was the man's aura. He indeed had consciousness. Old man Song obviously felt this feeling. His illusory body, under this kind of harsh aura, actually began to sway like it was being blown away by the wind. A pained expression appeared on his face. Yiqing Luo's expression tightened as she urgently opened her mouth. If you can hear me, first let go of old man Song's spirit body. That aura didn't move. On the contrary, old man Song's body became increasingly illusory. Don't you want me to help? This is your attitude when you want me to help. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly as she nervously looked at old man Song and then looked towards the man. Let go of old man Song and let him return to the azure dew bracelet. The young girl's voice was already tainted with some anger. That malicious, harsh aura, after pausing for a moment, it slowly retracted back. Then old man Song's figure fell down from midair. Old man Song. Yiqing Luo quickly raised her hand and let old man Song return to the azure dew bracelet. Almost at the moment when the black light released old man Song, old man Song's figure returned to the azure dew bracelet. His voice was a bit weak. I'm fine, I'll be fine after resting in the bracelet. This man needs my help and temporarily won't do anything to me. Moreover, he's sealed so he shouldn't be able to do anything to me. Yiqing Luo comforted. You rest first, I'll probe his background. Judging from the commotion just now, the man was obviously conscious, and he could hear Yiqing Luo's words. She stared vigilantly at the man and the giant chains wrapped around his body. She spoke again. Your formation needs the vast water divine artifact to undo it, right? I have the vast water divine artifact, and only I alone can activate its power. Following her words, the malice surrounding her seemed to want to swallow her whole. However, he was also trying his best to suppress his killing intent. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she continued, If you want me to help you, I can. However, as a condition for helping you, you should also show your sincerity. The malicious intent was even more ferocious than before. Yiqing Luo could even hear the sound of howling wind in her ears. It was as if a person was roaring angrily beside her ear. This man didn't seem to have a good temper. I need to communicate with you, what can I do? She couldn't always feel his malicious intent and guess the meaning he was expressing. She hadn't lit up that kind of skill. This kind of communication was totally unworkable. After Yiqing Luo's voice fell, the malicious intent surrounding her subsided, as if it was silent. Trash 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5139. About the time it took to burn half a stick of incense. Yiqing Luo felt there was an extremely strong attraction in front of her, constantly attracting her, calling her to come closer. The man was calling her? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips, her eyes cold and stern, secretly guessing the man's intentions. She suppressed the attraction surging in her chest. While looking down, she concentrated on the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. The power of the divine artifact was dazzling, the red flames burning like a raging fire. Yiqing Luo's brain quivered. You mean? You want me to use the azure dew bracelet to get close to you? Strong malice floated and lingered as if responding to Yiqing Luo's question. Yiqing Luo stood in the same place without moving. Her fingertips lightly stroked the azure dew bracelet, her pink lips slightly raised. How can I believe you? Intense malice surged forth once again, as if it was about to erupt in anger. Yiqing Luo still smiled, but the smile did not reach the bottom of her eyes. The azure dew artifact is the key to unlocking this formation. You want me to use the azure dew bracelet to get close to you? What if I unravel your formation and you want to kill me? Who am I going to cry to? She very rationally analyzed. So, from my point of view, I can't let myself be in extreme danger and unable to save myself. Now you are the one asking for my help. Your attitude better be a little more respectful. The surging malice was thick and deep. It made Yiqing Luo feel like her breathing was being choked. But the next moment, that surging malice dispersed. Like a compromise. Yiqing Luo's taut heartstrings relaxed. Sure enough, she guessed correctly. The other party right now urgently needed someone to help him unravel the formation. And she was the suitable candidate. The man was anxious to unravel the formation and regain his freedom. He absolutely would not easily anger her. Otherwise, the man would not need to go through so many ways to summon her here. Yiqing Luo glanced at the azure dew bracelet, then slowly stepped into the intersecting black and red lights, which was beside the man. She was very careful not to touch the huge iron chains that bound the man. And this formation did not have any intention of stopping her from approaching. Just like that, very easily, simply stood beside the man. At close range, Yiqing Luo could clearly see the man's appearance. Only then did she see clearly. On the man's head, there were two inconspicuous protrusions. Yiqing Luo stared at it carefully and stretched out her hand to touch it. It was a little hard and its shape looked like something like a horn. However, he couldn't tell what kind of horn it was. This man was not human? Yiqing Luo was rather astonished as she stared at the man from head to toe. When she pinched the horn on the man's head, the malice of the tyrannical aura that she had been suppressing once again surged up. Yiqing Luo retracted her hand. If you don't allow me to touch, then so be it. Why are you so fierce? I'm just curious about what's growing on your head. The tyrannical malice surrounded her body, giving her a kind of gloomy pressure before slowly dispersing. Yiqing Luo raised her fair hand. His slender, jade-like fingers under the crisscrossing red and black light looked like translucent jade. She moved slightly. The power of the vast water divine artifact slowly seeped into the man's body through her fingertips. Dong, the sound of metal colliding rang out. Bang, the huge chains hit the ground making a dull sound. Boom. The iron chains swayed incessantly, as if venting some kind of emotion. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5140. In the surrounding void of black light, those crisscrossing iron chains began to collide violently. The hurricane swept and the yin qi spread. The strong malicious intent was like a bloody mouth opened wide, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it let out a clamorous roar. Yiqing Luo was shaken so much that she took a step back, raising her eyes to look at the man with vigilance. She should be glad that this castle seemed to be frozen. Other than the surrounding black light that would float, there was nothing else. So when the hurricane swept, she was only filled with yin qi and malicious cold wind, directly blowing towards her face. It wasn't like those kinds of big moves after the formation was activated, like flying sand and gravel all over the sky, or whatever tornado sweeping. After Yiqing Luo stabilized herself, her long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously. After that, her fingertips moved. A raging flame feather fan appeared from the palm of her hand. Her nimble fingers moved slightly. The raging flame red light instantly gathered towards the glower flame fan. Even the power of the divine weapon that had seeped into the man's body also turned back at an extremely fast speed. Clatter, clatter. The huge iron chain swayed crazily, as if in the next moment it would split open. Even in the void of black light, the complex intertwining iron chain swayed incessantly, as if it was angry about something. Luo's red lips curled up in a mocking and sarcastic manner. Her charming eyes looked at the man with some traces of ridicule. This man indeed was trying to trick her. Luckily she kept an eye on him. Knew that he needed to rely on the vast water divine weapon's power to be able to break the seal. So in the beginning she only injected a little, vast water divine weapon's power to test him. As expected, he actually wanted to take the opportunity to directly devour her. Did he really think she was stupid? Looks like you don't need my help. Luo's voice was icy cold with a hint of sarcasm. And as Luo drew out the last trace of the divine weapon's power, that violently swaying iron chain finally stopped. Following that, there was a strong malicious intent surrounding her. Like a threat, like a warning. Luo was expressionless and unmoved. She took 2 steps back until she was out of the range of the chains. Only then did she casually sit down cross-legged. I haven't even undone the seal and you already want to take my life. If I help you undo the seal, do you think I can still live? She sneered. I don't trust you now, so the deal we made before is invalid. That intense malicious intent surged even more violently. The entire ball of dense black light wrapped around her body. However, before he could get close, the azure dew bracelet would gush out a fiery red light, directly blocking off the malicious corrosion. Luo's lips curled upwards as she looked at the man with a gaze filled with ridicule. Still trying to act? I don't mind staying here to see how long you can keep up the act. She leisurely looked down at the glowing flame fan in her fingertips. Her slender and fair fingers held onto the glowing flame fan as she casually tapped it. She was completely unresponsive to the man's malice and the chilling aura. Until, after the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Crash! The sound of the huge iron chain hitting the ground. A violent hurricane swept through the entire castle's main hall. First it was a very slight sound. Following that, it began to violently collide. Compared to earlier, when Luo poured the divine weapon's power into the man, the sound was even louder. When did you find out? A bone-chilling voice, as if it came from hell, resounded through the main hall. Luo listened to this voice and felt her hair stand on end. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 51-41. She slowly raised her eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with some mischievousness as she looked at the man who was restrained by the iron chain. Their eyes met. Luo had a moment of astonishment. That was a pair of, deep and cold, as if hiding the world's endless killing and sin. Black, extremely black. Evil, extremely evil. Evil, extremely evil. Just the 4 eyes met. Luo felt that her body and mind, even her soul, seemed to have a cold current, spreading to her limbs and bones. It made her feel a kind of unbearable pressure. That man. The man who was restrained by the iron chain. Luo also clearly saw that face hidden under the messy long hair. It was completely different from what she imagined. That could no longer be called a human face. The man's face, which was the side of his face that she saw at the beginning, was indeed handsome, sword-like brows raised, eyes full of malice, revealing the coldness of killing and sin. But, on the other side, it made one's hair stand. That side of the face was covered with black scales. One after another, densely covering half of the face. The color of his lips was not the red of a human, but a kind of purplish black, as if it was poisoned. Luo's slender brows frowned slightly. No wonder you're the new owner of the vast water divine weapon. The man's cold voice rang. That pair of malicious eyes sized up Luo. After seeing this lord's face, you can still maintain your composure. But you're really ugly and quite scary. Luo objectively evaluated. The man laughed loudly. Laughing so much that Luo felt like the mountains were collapsing. Especially when he laughed, that half of the face full of black scales, twisted together, looking even more terrifying. You're the descendant of that woman, Fongo? After the man finished laughing, he stared at Luo, sizing her up. It's been thousands of years, I don't know how many generations have passed, but you still look like that woman. This man really knew Fongo? That also met this man at least thousands of years ago when her mother was still alive. Old monster. Luo. She's my mother. The man's eyes, which were filled with malice, were momentarily stunned. Then he stared at Yiqing Luo, sizing her up from head to toe. Are you lying to me? I've read countless women, how could I not see that you're just a 15 or 16-year-old girl? Moreover, if you were that woman's daughter, would you be so weak? Yiqing Luo. It's up to you to believe or not. It was one thing to suspect that she wasn't her mother's daughter, but there was no need to attack her personally, right? The man stared at Yiqing Luo for quite some time, even the chains on his forelimbs kept shaking. Finally, they were able to ascertain Yiqing Luo's age. Thinking that Yiqing Luo was lying to him, he asked his doubts again. How did you know that I am actually conscious? Furthermore, it was so timely that it prevented me from devouring it. I guessed it. Yiqing Luo replied carelessly. The man frowned slightly, and the black scales on his palm gathered together again. You guessed it? At that time, she had made a solemn vow, confident that she would be able to drag it out with him. It was actually, guessed it? Yiqing Luo nodded. Just a casual guess. If you have really regained your consciousness and I'm staring at you after a long time, you won't be able to maintain a single movement. I didn't expect you to be so impatient. Then what if I actually haven't regained my consciousness? The man felt stuffy. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5142. Yiqing Luo casually lifted her eyelids. If you don't, then so be it, it's just a waste of time. This seat can spend another 10,000 years here. You, a human without any food here, can you outlast this seat? The malevolence in the man's eyes intensified. Yiqing Luo sneered at him. I'm not stupid, I'll wait for a while. If you really don't regain consciousness, I'll leave. Do you think after entering here you can still get out? The man sneered. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. If I don't try, how would I know? She indifferently leaned back and lazily lifted her eyelids. What's more, I've made the right bet, haven't I? The man's dark and gloomy face, that half of his face with black scales, seemed to have waves of scales floating. You're smart. You flatter me. Yiqing Luo bluntly admitted. The man's treacherous, murderous eyes began to scrutinize Yiqing Luo bit by bit. Finally it landed on her wrist. That azure dew bracelet with cherry blossoms, dazzling red light, like a burning fire. He said, what do you want to help this seat to undo this array? Yiqing Luo tilted her head, opened a pair of innocent and harmless eyes and replied seriously, earlier if I wasn't smart, I'm afraid my azure dew artifact would have been swallowed by you. A person who wants my life, why should I save him? She blinked her eyes, which were as bright as the stars in the sky, and there was a harmless light circulating in them. She smiled. If it were you, would you be willing? A strong murderous aura suddenly rose from the man's body. That horrifying face also twisted into a horrifying expression. His poisoned purplish-black lips curled up sinisterly and said word by word coldly, Feng family's descendant, you have no choice. You can only leave this place if you undo this hall's array, otherwise you will be trapped here with this seat. The man's malicious intent and the dense evil aura didn't affect the young lady in the slightest. The girl's eyes were calm. Her bright red lips curled up in a very casual manner. It doesn't matter. I'll die if I save you and I'll die if I don't. I might as well not save you. At least, if I die you'll still be sealed. The man, this young girl, was simply a marvel. It was one thing for him to not be afraid of the evil aura he was emitting. His words could choke someone to death. Clearly, his attempt to forcefully devour the young girl's power had completely angered her. In the depths of the man's eyes, a whirlpool surged and then it stopped. The sound of the huge chains around him also became slightly softer. He patiently said, Then what do you want? This is how you should ask for help. The girl nodded in satisfaction. Her bright red lips curled into a gratified smile. At the very least, you should show me your sincerity. You came here for the Divine Emperor's tomb, right? The man was stating a fact, not a question. The smile on Yiqing Luo's face instantly froze. The Divine Emperor's tomb? What did the Divine Emperor's tomb and this array have to do with him? The man was keenly aware that the expression on the young girl's face was not right. He sneered, that woman's descendant came here not to enter her tomb. Waste 7th Miss, Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th Miss, Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5143. She's truly a failure. Even her descendants didn't think of paying their respects to her. What did you say? Yiqing Luo interrupted the man's sneer as she stared into his eyes and asked word by word, "This is the Divine Emperor's tomb?" The man's eyes filled with malice suddenly curved sinisterly. Did I say that again? Yiqing Luo's heart pounded wildly. Her fair and delicate fingers were tightly clenched. His palms were covered in cold sweat. She forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva and forcefully suppressed the excitement in her chest. Her purpose in coming to the infernal domain was for the Divine Emperor's tomb, to find her mother's tomb chamber. Following the mysterious flames W diagram all the way, he only found the demon domain. The next clue was the demon dragon's lair. This was because they could not find any information about the demon dragon in the demon domain. There was no progress in searching for the Divine Emperor's tomb. But unexpectedly, it was an accident. She had news about the tomb of the Divine Emperor. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes were fixated on the man who was restrained by the iron chains. Is this the demon dragon's lair? When he heard Yiqing Luo's question, that sinister-looking man who was waiting for Yiqing Luo to ask, congealed his expression. His eyes were filled with bloodlust and viciousness, and they were filled with killing intent. Mystic Dragon. It's been a long time since I've heard this title, he said. His voice was dark, hoarse, and somewhat piercing. The guess in Yiqing Luo's heart was verified after the man said this sentence. She looked at the man and suddenly smiled. So, you are the Mystic Dragon. No wonder this man's body was filled with endless murderous intent. Anyone who got close to him would be corroded by the yin energy around him. No wonder half of this man's face was covered in scales. Those were dragon scales. The so-called demon dragon's lair. He was referring to the place where the mystic dragon king, the man in front of him, was sealed. This was an ancient castle. That's right, I am the one who caused people to tremble in fear 10,000 years ago, the one who stood above the realms, the devil dragon king Long Outyen. The man raised his eyebrows, his gaze deep and cold. His eyes were filled with malice, arrogant and flamboyant. But, when he heard that name, Yiqing Luo almost choked. What? Was she hallucinating? Did she hear it wrong? What was the name of this demon dragon king? Long Outyen. So explosive, so Mary Sue, so casual? Yiqing Luo was flustered in the wind. To be honest, the name Long Outyen and his identity as the demonic dragon king were a perfect match. It was just as cool and arrogant. But, she really had no choice but to look directly at this name. This name almost made her heart, which had been excited about finding the demonic dragon's lair, calm down. Looking at Yiqing Luo's constipated expression, the man, Long Ao Tian, stared at her maliciously. Have you heard of my name? Yiqing Luo. She had heard it countless of times, all kinds of versions of Long Outyen. She adjusted the expression on her face, curled her lips and very seriously praised, "The name is very nice, it suits your temperament." Of course. Long Outyen sneered. Back then I was invincible in every realm. Then why are you sealed here now? Yiqing Luo listened to his boasting expressionlessly. Long Outyen. That is because I lost the bet with that woman, so I willingly stayed here. Since you are willing, what else do you need me to help you with? Yiqing Luo continued to be expressionless. She was either expressionless or unable to hold back her laughter. Waste 7th Miss, Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th Miss, Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5144. As though Yiqing Luo had poked his sore spot. Long Outyen's entire body rolled up a gust of chilly yin qi, rushing towards Yiqing Luo's face. That sinister, malicious and terrifying face was also filled with anger. His malicious eyes stared at her fiercely. Yiqing Luo continued to stab him expressionlessly. Why do I feel that you can't beat my mother, so you were sealed in this formation? Long Outyen heard the way Yiqing Luo addressed Feng Gu. His gaze was strange. That woman? Is really your mother? Could it be your mother? Yiqing Luo asked expressionlessly. Long Outyen retorted, how can you say that? How could that woman be my mother? Yiqing Luo. Mother, it felt like he was scolding someone. She felt that ever since she knew the name of this demon dragon king, the entire scene had changed. Previously she thought that this man was filled with murderous and malevolent yin qi, and he would fly into a rage at any disagreement, was an extremely cold strong man. But when he opened his mouth, Yiqing Luo felt that he was an idiot, and the kind of idiot with a childish temperament. Anyway, from his conversation with her, Yiqing Luo totally couldn't sense that this was a devil dragon king who killed without batting an eyelid and was filled with killing and blood stench. My mother sealed you here because... She paused slightly and her tone was hesitant. To guard the entrance to the Divine Emperor's tomb? The profound flame Tianshu diagram indicated that the entrance to the Divine Emperor's tomb was in the demon dragon's lair, which was the place where Long Outyin was sealed. In addition to what Long Outyin said, he was sealed here because of a bet with Feng Gu. Yiqing Luo had a very bold guess. This Long Outyin was the demon dragon king in fact. He was the guardian of the Divine Emperor's tomb entrance. Previously, when she and Dmo Shen broke the array to enter the Nether Palace's secret force, they had neglected the fact that under the Nether Palace's array was the array which had sucked her in. It was probably the formation that her mother had set up that year. And the reason why she was sucked into the formation, but Dmo Shen didn't come over. Probably because she was Feng Ji's daughter. Feng Ji's blood flowed in her. Most importantly, she had the vast water divine relic. This was the key to unlocking Long Outyin's formation. Thinking about it this way, all his previous doubts had been resolved. Guard the tomb of the Divine Emperor? I'm a high and mighty demonic dragon. How could I guard that woman's tomb? Long Outyin spat on the ground. If that woman hadn't tricked me and caused me to lose the bet, I wouldn't have been sealed here. He was fuming with anger as he stared at Yiqing Luo. Since you're that woman's daughter, then release the seal for me. This seed is already sick of staying in this damn place. Yiqing Luo beamed as she stated her conditions. I want to enter the Divine Emperor's tomb. Go in if you want. What do you want to talk to me about? Long Outyin's eyes were filled with malice, and there was a cold glint in them. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she put on a serious look. But I don't know how to go in. How would I know? Long Outyin replied snappily. Yiqing Luo spread out her hands with a helpless look. Then there's no other way. Since you're unable to fulfill my request, then there's nothing for us to discuss. Saying that, she brushed her peach-red dress and stood up slowly. The peach-red dress was like peach blossom petals, which accentuated the young lady's outstanding figure. Long Outyin stared straight at her as his voice lowered. You're really that woman's daughter, you look so alike. Chapter 5145. Yiqing Luo met Long Outyin's gaze, ignoring the malicious intent in his eyes. Do you really think that if I don't undo your seal, I won't be able to get out of here? The young lady's tone was soft, with a hint of careless provocation. Long Outyin, absent-minded for a moment, suddenly regained his senses. He frowned. You can get out? Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly. Her slender fingers brushed past the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. Since this is the seal set by my mother, and the method to break the array requires my azure dew artifact. Then with the azure dew artifact, it shouldn't be difficult for me to leave this place, right? Her lips curled as she smiled casually. I should thank you for helping me find my mother's tomb. The vicious aura around Long Outyin once again surged violently. The killing intent and blood on him seemed to cover the entire main hall of the castle. How dare you? The icy cold words seemed to seep into a large area of cold yin qi on Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo frowned, raised her hand, and the glower flame fan spread out. The blazing red light lingered around her, shrouding her, dispersing the yin qi released by Long Outyin. Are you threatening me? Yiqing Luo crossed her arms, looked at him calmly and kindly reminded him, Long Outyin, now you need my help. Long Outyin was enraged. His eyes were filled with evil intent, and they were filled with a chilly rage. He clenched his fists. Half of his face, which was covered in scales, twisted and moved as if the scales were floating. It made people who saw it had a shocking déjà vu. You and that woman are really alike, the same. Despicable and shameless. He was practically gritting his teeth as he spoke. Yiqing Luo accepted this compliment with a smile. I'm just standing on my side. What I did was to ensure my own safety. She paused as her tone became sarcastic. After all, you are someone who wants to devour me. How could I possibly be at ease with you? No matter what the reason was for Long Outyin's action earlier, there was no way to explain, no way to clear his name. It was true that he wanted to kill her heart. How could she have created such a huge problem for herself? You can enter the Divine Emperor's tomb. Long Outyin finally relented. But he hadn't even spoken his conditions. The young girl's lips curled up, and her pink lips parted slightly as she interrupted him. I'll enter the Divine Sovereign's tomb first, and then I'll consider undoing your seal. Otherwise, there's no need for that. How could she not know what Long Outyin wanted to say? Didn't he just want her to break the seal first before he brought her into the Divine Emperor's tomb? She was not a fool. Who would believe him? He's a rotten old man, very bad. How do I know that you won't lie to me? Long Outyin refused without hesitation. Yiqing Luo smiled confidently with a hint of provocation. But, Devil Dragon King, you don't have any leeway to choose. She lifted a strand of hair that was draped over her shoulder and twined it around her slender fingertips. You're the one who's at a disadvantage right now, so I'm the one in control. You can only choose to trust me. Either you trust me or we part ways here. She didn't sound too enthusiastic. As though she wasn't very interested in Long Outyin's reply. That indifferent attitude. It made Long Outyin so angry that his entire face turned black. He gritted his teeth as he stared angrily at Yiqing Luo. You lass, you really don't want to be at a disadvantage. The price of being at a disadvantage is my life. Yiqing Luo smiled calmly. Chapter 5146. Long Outyin's eyes were filled with malice, and his gaze was cold and ruthless. He hadn't even calmed down completely from the rage brought by the young girl. What she said next made Long Outyin's face darken even more. You destroyed the trust with your own hands. You no longer have the right to negotiate. Long Outyin's evil and murderous aura intertwined in the air. Finally, it was time for peace. His purplish-red lips spat out a single word, all right. It was indeed as what Yiqing Luo said. He had no choice. Yiqing Luo curled her lips in satisfaction. You won't regret this decision of yours. Long Outyin gritted his teeth. I hope so. This was probably the second time in Long Outyin's life that he had been humiliated. Moreover, it was the kind that could not resist at all. The first time was Fenggo. The second time was Yiqing Luo. Looking at Long Aotian's stare, Yiqing Luo could roughly guess his inner thoughts. She raised her hand and touched her face with her slender fingers. She asked the question that had been bothering her for a long time. You seem to be able to tell that I'm in disguise? Ever since Long Outyin had mentioned that she resembled Fenggo, she had been wondering about it. She was in disguise now. Although Jiwuwa's disguise was the same as using the same facial features to create a different face, Jiwuwa's facial features were the same. However, there was still a huge gap between him and Fenggo. However, Long Outyin could tell that she resembled Fenggo at first glance. This meant that Long Outyin had seen her as the real her. Long Outyin rolled his eyes. How could I not see through such a low-level disguise technique? When I look at people, I look at their souls. Yiqing Luo. You're amazing. Long Outyin snorted coldly. Hand it over, I'll send you to the Emperor God's tomb right now. Things? What the hell? Yiqing Luo expressed her stupefaction. Long Outyin furrowed his brows. Dark mirror, take out the dark mirror. Nether mirror? Yiqing Luo thought for some time before she reacted. It was the nether mirror she had taken from Netherworld, a subordinate of the Palace of Dark Shadow in the 21st world. Yiqing Luo took out the Ming mirror. In the next instant, the thick black mist sucked the nether mirror over. The nether mirror floated above Long Outyin's head. Endless black yin energy washed over the nether mirror. Done. The chains binding Long Outyin's body rattled. I've opened the entrance to the God Emperor's tomb. Release my seal now. Yiqing Luo stared at that suspended mirror. In the nether mirror, Yinchi searched. One could vaguely see a floating figure in the nether mirror. On the floating island. He looked very familiar. She had once, when the Palace of Gloom tried to find the Divine Emperor's tomb through her, she had hidden her consciousness outside the chamber of the Divine Emperor's tomb. The floating island she saw was exactly the same. It was the floating island that contained the Divine Sovereign's tomb. This meant that Long Outyin was not lying. She squinted her eyes and looked at Long Outyin. Why are you the guardian of the Divine Emperor's tomb, since his mother asked him to guard the Divine Emperor's tomb? Was it because of trust? Or was it because the murderous aura on him was enough to suppress the power of the Divine Emperor's tomb? This was to prevent the existence of the Divine Emperor's tomb from being leaked out. However, no matter what it was, she didn't intend to release Long Outyin's array just like that. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly. Following that, her feet moved. The secret art of blink movement was exhibited. She had already passed through the yin energy released by Long Outyin and leapt into the nether mirror. Chapter 5147. Behind her, Long Outyin bellowed in exasperation. You wicked woman! Finally, Yiqing Luo could no longer hear Long Outyin's howls. After entering the mirror, Her body fell down weightlessly. Finally she landed on a floating island. She stabilized herself and surveyed the surroundings. Indeed, it was that familiar majestic tomb. But as compared to before when she entered the consciousness tomb through the murals on the stone wall, now she could clearly feel that her feet were stepping on this greenish-black stone slab. The grave xianxia lingered around her, swallowing her with its fangs and claws. The treacherous red mist that filled the sky was also clear and close. Her senses were extremely deep and it covered her eyes. It gave her a creepy feeling. This tomb was exactly the same as in her memory. Her heart suddenly pounded wildly, as though something was about to overflow from her chest. That feeling, she didn't know how to describe it. It was like she could sense that in the tomb, there was a feeling that made her extremely excited. And her eyes were turning sour. She knew that came from the connection between her and her mother. This was her and the mother whom she had no memories of for the first time. Such a close distance connection. Excited and apprehensive. Excited and reserved. Xianxia nervously clenched her slender fingers as she took a deep breath. Following that, step by step, she walked towards the tomb's stone door. Regarding the tomb's layout, Xianxia was stunned. She was already familiar with it. When she reached the stone door, Xianxia raised her head as she looked at the stone door. That was an extremely obvious, carved human-shaped totem. It wasn't like the indistinct silhouette in her memory. Instead, it was reflected in her eyes extremely clearly. The silhouette was obvious, lifelike. She seemed to be able to see it. That holy and elegant lady dressed in a fiery red dress was standing right in front of her. Their eyes were facing each other. That kind of gentleness and elegance made her heart race uncontrollably. She stared at that clear face in a daze as her fingertips touched that cold stone door. Her pink lips moved slightly as her hoarse voice spat out a word, "Mother?" Just one word choked with sobs. The moment she finished speaking, Xianxia's eyes widened. The cold stone door suddenly glowed with an extremely intense red light. That red light was extremely dazzling. Xianxia regained her senses and looked at the stone door which was emitting red rays in astonishment. It was rather adorable. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and put the azure water divine weapon up." Old man Song's impatient urging voice could be heard beside his ear. "Perhaps it was your call that awakened the divine emperor's obsession with you before he passed away. If I rush in now, I might still have a chance to see the remnant will of the god monarch." Xianxia's eyelashes fluttered as her pupils contracted. She hurriedly took off the azure water 5-piece set. The girl's slender fingers trembled slightly. Holding the azure water divine weapon, he pressed it into the stone door, and it floated around the human-shaped totem, in the shape of the 5 accessories. Because he was nervous, she missed several times. Finally, the 5 divine artifacts were all embedded in the totems. She pursed her lips, and with a flick of her finger, a drop of blood gushed out. She placed her blood on the totem. After that, Xianxia only felt a gush of warm spring energy, slowly flowing through her limbs and bones. As if there was a pair of warm arms, gently embracing her body. As if it could gently accommodate her everything. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-48. It was so strange yet so familiar. This feeling was totally different from before. It wasn't that she hadn't tried to touch this stone door before. However, the power of the stone door made her feel extremely uncomfortable and painful, although it was all for her own good. But now, it was so warm that her heart was in a mess. It made her not want to open her eyes. Only wanted to sink into this pair of warm arms, to enjoy the only warm moment that belonged to her and her mother. It seemed to have sensed Xianxia's thoughts. That pair of warm arms gently patted her head. Xianxia even vaguely seemed to hear an ethereal and gentle low laugh. Like a warm breeze brushing past her ears. It warmed her body and mind. Xianxia endured the sourness of her nose and murmured, "Mother," that ethereal and gentle low laugh, melodious. Vaguely she seemed to hear a voice gently saying to her, "Go, child." By the time Xianxia regained her senses, she was already standing in the dark tomb chamber. "Mother?" Xianxia turned around and looked around, trying to find that familiar yet strange figure. But the surroundings were pitch black and there was no energy fluctuation. Only her voice reverberated in the tomb chamber. It was not like what she had imagined. The moment she entered the tomb chamber, she would see her mother's remaining obsession. But she could feel that there was a pair of warm eyes, looking at her gently, looking at her. Her mother was still by her side. Yiqing Luo tightened her slender fingers to calm herself down. Since she had already entered the Divine Emperor's tomb, her mother's tomb chamber, it was not far from her reunion with her mother. Yiqing Luo took out a luminous pearl and was ready to find the way to the tomb chamber. When the luminous pearl shone on the surrounding scene, Yiqing Luo was stunned. She was now in a deep and long cave. That was not the point. The point was, why did the surrounding environment look so familiar? Why did it feel? She seemed to have been here several times. She had an eidetic memory. Yiqing Luo could almost ascertain where she was at right now. Here? Wasn't it the Yi family ancestor's tomb that she had been to before? Yes. The tomb of the Yi clan's ancestor. Before she had transmigrated, she had been tricked by a group of Yi clan elders into going in to look for the Azure Dew bracelet. She had made a trip into the tomb of the Yi clan ancestors. That was the tomb of the Yi family's ancestors that she had entered in the 21st century because of the vast water divine artifact. Why was his mother's tomb so similar to the tomb of the Yi family's ancestors? Yiqing Luo harbored such a perturbed heart as she followed her memory and walked towards the inside of the tomb, which was the place where the coffin was placed. Everything was exactly the same as what he remembered. The formation in the tomb chamber that extended in all directions was also the same. Even with her eyes closed, Yiqing Luo was still able to move forward accurately. As expected, you've returned. A gloomy voice came from not far away. That faint and cold tone seemed to ripple out in the tomb chamber. When it entered Yiqing Luo's ears, it made Yiqing Luo feel a chill from head to toe. Yiqing Luo stopped in her tracks and accurately located the direction of the voice. The expression on her face had some subtle changes. Old Mu, long time no see. The owner of that voice was the tomb guardian of the Yi family's ancestors' tomb. Yiqing Luo had met him twice before. Waste 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. Waste 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5149. When she saw the graveyard guardian, Yiqing Luo was completely certain. This place was indeed the Yi family's ancestors' tomb. No. Or rather, the so-called Yi family's ancestors' tomb had always been the God Emperor's tomb. But the previous Yi family's ancestors' tomb was what her mother wanted her to see, an ordinary Yi family's ancestors' tomb. Yiqing Luo looked at the graveyard guardian which had floated in front of her. In her memory, it had a fiery temper, the old tomb which would smack her head if there was a disagreement. But the current him had a deep and solemn expression. It stared at Yiqing Luo, its brows were filled with melancholy. Finally it sighed, I knew long ago there would be such a day. It turned around and floated back the way it came. The God Emperor's tomb will eventually appear, and you will eventually awaken the God Emperor's power. Fate really can't be avoided. Yiqing Luo didn't really understand what he meant by those confusing words. The graveyard guardian's spiritual body floated very slowly. Yiqing Luo followed behind it, pursed her lips slightly and asked, Old tomb, what you've been guarding right from the start is my mother's tomb, which is the God Emperor's tomb, right? The graveyard guardian laughed lightly. Haven't you already guessed it when you stepped into this place? It floated forward and said, At the right time, you will be able to open the real tomb's door, and this is your unavoidable fate. The God Emperor's emperor has really put in a lot of effort for you. Yiqing Luo could hear the deeper meaning in the graveyard guardian's words. She roughly understood some of it. The graveyard guardian's ultimate motive for guarding the God Emperor's tomb was to wait for her to awaken. Previously she had come to this motive twice. It was all because the God Emperor's emperor wanted her to see it, and to let her slowly understand her own identity. He used this method to deliver what the emperor of the Divine Emperor wanted to give to her. And this time, to find the God Emperor's tomb and use the Azure Aqua artifact to open the God Emperor's tomb, which was the real unlocking the seal of the God Emperor's tomb. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes slightly, looking at the cherry blossom Azure Aqua bracelet on her wrist. She curls her lips and says, I know. My mother has always loved me. Even though Fenggu did not exist in her memories, but everything Fenggu had done, she could clearly feel Fengji's love. Her mother, even when he passed away, he had arranged everything for her clearly. We're here. The graveyard guardian's spiritual body stopped leading the way. Yiqing Luo paused. It seemed that they had not reached the coffin area of the inner circle. Following the sight of the graveyard guardian, Yiqing Luo saw In front, on the right side of the coffin, there was a narrow hole that could only fit one person. The Divine Emperor's tomb has been opened, and the seal is gradually being removed. The graveyard guardian's voice was light. Hurry up and go in. The power of the God Emperor needs you to inherit it. In other words, when the seal on the tomb of the Divine Emperor was lifted, everyone in the outside world would know the location of the Divine Emperor's tomb. Yiqing Luo was very clear that the inheritance power of the Divine Emperor and the things in the Divine Emperor's tomb. How many people in the outside world were thinking of ways to plunder? Especially Umbra Palace. One must know that Umbra Palace's motive right from the start was the Divine Emperor's tomb. Not to mention there were countless other forces. Even when Dmo Xian went to the lower realm Nirvana realm, it was also for the profound flame Tianshu map, which was the map to the Divine Emperor's tomb. Trash 7th Miss, Overlord please be gentle. Trash 7th Miss, Overlord please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5150. So, how many people were interested in the whereabouts of the Divine Emperor's tomb? She must complete her mother's wish for her to inherit the power of the Divine Emperor before the seal of the Divine Emperor's tomb was completely lifted. Yiqing Luo smiled at the tomb guardian as she said softly, "Thank you." After that she stepped into the small cave. What entered her eyes wasn't any complicated array or messy mechanism. It was a vast and empty area. In the middle of it all lay an enormous coffin, which emanated a frigid aura. It was made from 10,000-year-old frigid ice. That coffin was white and transparent, like a thick layer of ice condensed into a ball. Her vision fell onto the coffin. Not knowing why, her eyes were already red. She stretched out her hand to touch her face and discovered that it was wet. Even she herself didn't know when she had tears streaming down her face. The agitation and apprehension in her heart, and the nervousness when she saw the coffin. It made her stand on the spot, unable to move, as if her feet had 1,000 pounds of weight. She wanted to go forward to take a look at her mother in the coffin. But she was so nervous that she had forgotten how to move. Originally thought that she could be very calm. But when it really came to this, all the psychological construction was just self-righteousness. The complicated feelings in her heart made it difficult for her to even breathe. This was true kinship. Blood was thicker than water. She stared blankly at the wet hands. All of a sudden she felt a chilly sensation on her back, but it was also an extremely warm sensation that pressed close to her, like a pair of warm hands, encircling her in a slightly cold embrace. "My child. My Luo, A clear choked voice rang clearly beside Yiqing Luo's ears. A drop of icy cold tear fell on her body. Yiqing Luo's petite body, almost at this moment, tensed up. That voice filled with bitterness and longing made Yiqing Luo's heart as if it was tightly gripped. Tears flowed out uncontrollably. That familiar voice. All along when she couldn't hold on, it had been giving her encouragement, teaching her to move forward. That familiar gentleness. It was the warmth that she had once unknowingly felt. Mother? She opened her mouth, choking with sobs. It turned out that her mother had been silently guarding her all this time. In his own way, guardian her. Yiqing Luo's hand slowly used the strength on her waist to cover that pair of slightly icy cold hands. It's very soft. It's his mother's hand. Luo, that gentle voice choked with emotion. My Luo, you've suffered. Yiqing Luo clung onto her mother's hand as she slowly turned around. Behind him was a slightly transparent spirit body. She wore a blazing phoenix robe embroidered with lifelike phoenix flowers. As the skirt fluttered in the wind, numerous phoenix flowers bloomed. That face. Indeed, she was 70% similar to her. She hugged the spiritual body that seemed like it would dissipate at any moment. Mother. I've finally met you. Fenggu, who had gentle features and tears in her eyes, hugged the person in her arms tightly. Her longing for her daughter for the past 10,000 years completely collapsed when her daughter called her mother. 10,000 years of pride and strength. At this moment there was no way to suppress it. Fenggu sobbed softly as she gently patted Yiqing Luo's back, her voice choked and happy. I thought you would hate me. Fengji's spiritual form. Her body didn't have the warmth of a human and was slightly cold. But other than that she was no different from a human. 17 Waist 7th Young Miss. Overlord please be gentle. Waist 7th Young Miss. Overlord please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-51. Yiqing Luo hugged this unfamiliar yet reassuring cold embrace tightly. Her voice was hoarse and she suppressed her emotions. Hate? Back when she found out that she wasn't the daughter of the Yi family, she indeed hated Fenggu. But this hatred was only hatred for being abandoned by her biological parents without knowing anything. There wasn't even a single reason. Hearing her daughter's reply of hate, Fengji's petite body trembled slightly. The next moment Yiqing Luo's voice rang again, but later on I found out that everything mother did was to protect me. That so-called hatred all turned into gratitude. She hugged Fengji's waist as her little head rubbed against her chest. I know mother has suffered a lot for me. Even now, in order to meet me, you have sacrificed a lot. She raised her head and looked at this close proximity, familiar yet unfamiliar face which made her feel incomparably intimate. Her voice was hoarse as she called out once again, Mother, I miss you very much. Fenggu replied chokingly, Mother misses you too. Mother and daughter had finally met after being separated for 10,000 years. Although they were separated by yin and yang. But their longing was like water from a broken dam, gushing down unceasingly. One human and one spiritual body hugged each other tightly, conveying the longing between them. After experiencing 2 lifetimes, Yiqing Luo felt that she was so strong that nothing could make her lose control of her emotions. But now the one who was crying in Fengji's arms was also her. But Yiqing Luo didn't feel embarrassed. Yiqing Luo finally calmed down. At the same time when the two of them were expressing their longing, Yiqing Luo also roughly understood from Fengji's mouth the reason why she was handed over to the blood-bone barbaric king. That year Fenggu and Yiqing Luo's father were engaged. Fengji's love was vigorous, to the extent that she totally didn't listen to anyone's advice as she loved the man wholeheartedly. After that, she gave birth to the man's child. Just like any ordinary woman's thoughts, she thought that as long as she gave birth to the child for the sake of the child, Feng family would definitely be able to accept the man and understand her deep love for the man. But what she didn't expect was, all the changes happened right after she gave birth to the child. She had never thought, the man and her together. It wasn't because of love. It was premeditated. She noticed the strange look on the man's face. She noticed that the way the man looked at the child was not the way a father looked at his daughter, but a greedy look. There were suspicions. He would pay more attention. When the child was less than 3 months old, then she realized, the man attempted to dig out his daughter's heart and take away the profound heart jade that was being nurtured there. Panicking, she stopped the man's evil deed and ran away with her daughter. Since they had shed all pretense of cordiality, the man didn't try to hide it. The two of them began to fight. Fenggu was worried about her daughter in her arms. Moreover, her opponent was the man she loved deeply, so she naturally had some reservations when she attacked. However, the man's every move contained a thick killing intent. Especially, the moves the man used and the profound chi fluctuations on his body. It was something she had never seen before. Especially, the man's body. The yin energy swirling around him didn't seem like a proper person at all. Most importantly, in front of her, the man had always been as gentle as jade. His strength was not too strong and his talent was also ordinary. This was also one of the reasons why she thought that the Feng family was unwilling to accept men. But obviously, everything was not like what Fenggu had imagined. Trash 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss, Overlord please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-52. The man's strength was on par with hers. No, or rather, the man was merciless and his methods were ruthless. Fenggu, who was in a state of shock and apprehension, was no match for the man. In the end, she could only take the chance to escape with the child while he was unprepared. Following that, she issued an order as the Emperor of the Gods. Her child and the man disappeared together and the entire god realm searched for the whereabouts of the child and the man. Following that, Fenggu quietly entrusted the child to the barbaric blood king. As a mother, she had to be strong. For the child. No matter how deeply she loved the man, she would never allow the man to hurt her daughter. Especially, how deep her love was. How deep her hatred was now. The man had been deceiving her from the beginning. Falling in love with her and letting her give birth to the child. Everything was for the sake of the child who nurtured the divine phoenix profound jade heart. Later on, it was the battle between the two for the child. This battle was the nightmare of the god realm. And it ended with both perishing together. Yes, perishing together. Feng Ji's death was to kill the man. And before she died, she used her remaining strength to send Yiqing Luo's soul to another world, the 21st century. She had arranged all the paths for Yiqing Luo. In the 21st century, in the most beautiful era where there was no war, she wanted to live well in the Yi family that she had built. But she had miscalculated one thing, and underestimated fate. Yiqing Luo listened to Feng Gu talking about the past and was only a little surprised. So, the Yiqing Luo in the Nirvana realm is actually the real me? And the reason why I am in the 21st century is because Mother specially sent me over for my safety. Actually, regarding her connection with this foreign world, Yiqing Luo had already guessed it. Compared to the time she lived in the 21st century, she could feel it more clearly. This foreign world was where she belonged. Mother thought I had arranged everything to protect you for the rest of your life, but I didn't expect I couldn't fight against fate. You still came back. Feng Gu gently brushed aside the stray hair on the young lady's cheek. I am happy to see you, I am happy that you are here, but she sighed softly, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing for you to come back here. Of course it's good. Yiqing Luo replied without hesitation. It's good to be able to reunite with Mother. Feng Gu smiled. Her long and narrow eyes curved, and her smile was like a blossoming rose. Yiqing Luo's arms encircled Feng Ji's waist as she placed her head on her shoulder, like an ordinary daughter, acting coquettishly towards her mother. The most important thing is, I've already appeared here, so there's no room for assumptions. That was right, no matter how worried Feng Gu was. What happened had already happened. There was no way to change it. Feng Ji's hand touched the girl's face. As the girl's fingertips turned cold, a thin layer of skin peeled off, revealing a face that resembled Feng Ji's. The rims of Feng Ji's eyes turned redder as she held Yiqing Luo's face in her hands. Her eyes were sparkling with tears. Mother's Luo, you've really grown up. Yiqing Luo could clearly see her own reflection in her mother's crystal-clear eyes. She suddenly pursed her pink lips tightly, grabbed Feng Ji's hand tightly, and looked at Feng Gu seriously and solemnly. Following that, she asked word by word, Mother, is there any way to let you stay? Waste 7th young miss, Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th young miss, Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Daxtulp. Chapter 51-53. As soon as she said that, Feng Ji's hand on the young lady's face paused slightly. That icy cold touch brushed past Yiqing Luo's face and finally drooped down powerlessly. Yiqing Luo intercepted Feng Ji's hand and held it tightly. Mother, there must be a way, right? Old Man Tsang could be in the form of a guardian spirit in the Azure Dew bracelet. And he could use the Azure Dew artifact to let Old Man Tsang turn back into a human. Then there must be a way to let her mother survive. Silly child. Feng Gu smiled gently and raised her hand to touch her head. Mother can see you again and hug you like this, that's already very satisfying. Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed again. She was not reconciled and wanted to say something. But Feng Gu smiled gently and shook her head at her. Then stretched out both hands and held her slender shoulders. 10,000 years ago I should have disappeared. Now that I can see you grown up and seeing how outstanding you are, I have nothing else to ask for. She paused slightly and continued in a joking tone, the only regret is, Mother has no way to personally meet that man who will accompany you for life, no way to personally hand you over to him. There must be a way. There must be. Yiqing Luo immediately held Feng Ji's hand tightly. He is outside now. If you want to see him, you will definitely see him. It's too late. Feng Gu smiled gently and raised her head. Mother doesn't have much time to be able to talk so much with you, is already an extravagant hope. She held Yiqing Luo's hand tightly and smiled gently. Now let Mother complete Mother's last wish for 10,000 years. Yiqing Luo realized something. Her heart twitched violently. She said in a panic, Mother, you. Before she could finish her words, her wrist tightened. After that, she was pulled by Feng Gu and pressed next to that transparent coffin. An icy cold current seeped into her body. Feng Gu held Yiqing Luo's hand and pressed it on the coffin. Don't resist, accept the Divine Phoenix's inheritance and inherit the position of Divine Emperor. Feng Ji's gentle voice rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with panic. She struggled to get up. I don't want to accept the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix. Mother, it was so difficult for us to meet again. I don't want this. How could she not understand the meaning behind Feng Ji's words? Once she inherited the inheritance of the divine phoenix, Feng Gu would completely disappear from this world. Mother, don't you still want to see my him? He must be on his way to the cemetery right now. Just wait a little longer, just wait a little longer. Yi Qingluo resisted. The bone-chilling coldness and the surging power caused her body and mind to feel extreme pain. She didn't want to see her mother, whom she had just met, disappear from her world again. As long as Xian must have a way. Xian would definitely have a way. Yi Qingluo's heart was in a mess. The feeling of losing someone important to her made it almost impossible for her to think calmly. Luo, don't be stubborn. Feng Ji's voice was still gentle, but this time it was serious. Her pair of gentle and serene beautiful eyes met the young girl's. Mother also wants to accompany you, but you should accept this reality. The you now shouldn't be restricted to me. There are more important things waiting for you to do. Accept the divine phoenix's inheritance. Accept mother's last wish. Trash 7th Miss, Overlord be gentle. Trash 7th Miss, Overlord be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-54. Then replace mother, and become a qualified Emperor of Divine Emperors. Her beautiful eyes were filled with irresistible seriousness and graveness. Yi Qingluo was unable to reject it. She was smart. How could he not know? The so-called Divine Emperor's tomb was found 10,000 years ago, before his mother passed away. For her, he had paved a path of retreat. She, who possessed the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, possessed the ability to control the vast water divine weapon. If she lived forever in the 21st life. As a result, no one had been able to use the Azure Water Divine Artifact or the bloodline of the Divine Emperor's descendant to open this tomb. But, if she came back to this other world, then, the tomb of the Divine Emperor was her escape route. Obtaining the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix and inheriting the throne of the Divine Emperor, she would have enough power to protect herself, the people or things she wanted to protect. He also has enough power to fulfill his mother's wish. Yi Qingluo shut her eyes tightly and relaxed her body. She did not know how much time had passed. He only knew, after the chilliness eroded him. Then, it was like a ball of raging fire. It was as if it wanted to burn everything in the world and devour her completely. That ball of fire was like a raging sea wave, rolling and surging unceasingly. Yi Qingluo felt that she was about to be burnt into slag. In his body, the majestic and thick dark force spread to his limbs and bones. Yi Qingluo could faintly sense that those profound energy had formed into cherry blossoms within her body. Just like the totem of the Azure Dew bracelet. Yi Qingluo wanted to feel it in detail. Suddenly the surging power froze in place. Old Man Song's voice reached his ears. Not good. Someone broke in. Someone? Yi Qingluo's mind swayed and was just about to open her eyes. Feng Ji's firm voice rang in his ears again. Don't move. Concentrate. Yi Qingluo gritted her teeth, hesitating in her heart. Feng Gu emphasized, if you don't want to waste all your previous efforts, focus. If you are distracted now, the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix will fail. Do you know the consequences of failure? You only have one chance. Once he failed. That was to destroy the path her mother had paved for her over the past 10,000 years. Once he failed. The inheritance of the Divine Phoenix would forever stop with her generation. Yi Qingluo could not imagine the consequences of failure. She took a deep breath, calmed herself down and focused her mind. Bang. At the same time the graveyard suddenly shook. The entire graveyard shook. Two tightly entangled figures rushed into the tomb chamber at an extremely fast speed. The entire majestic graveyard seemed to be on the verge of collapse at this moment, on the verge of collapse. Boulders flew in all directions and fell to the ground. A figure shrouded in a black robe quickly followed the aura. Behind him, there was a slender figure chasing after him relentlessly. Just as the black-robed figure was about to rush into the inner circle, the tyrannical profound strength came crashing down, blocking the path in front. The man in the bamboo robe landed lightly in front of the black-robed figure. Scram! That sinister and cold voice was filled with tyrannical killing intent. The man's obedient and harmless face and his deep azure eyes caused people to tremble with fear. Out of the corner of his eye, he glanced in the direction of the inner circle. He did not respond to the black-robed figure's words, nor did he intend to move. Overlord, what's the use of you blocking me? That black-robed figure snorted coldly. Why not? The both of us cooperate? As long as the both of us join forces, not to mention the God realm, even if we want the entire foreign world, it will be within our reach. The black-robed voice's sinister voice revealed an inexplicable bewitchment. Trash 7th Miss, Overlord please be gentle. Trash 7th Miss, Overlord please be gentle. 44,143 Daxtulp. Chapter 51-55. The man looked at the black-robed figure expressionlessly as his dark red thin lips moved slightly, not interested. These three simple and calm words made the black-robed voice's viciousness intensified by several notches. Overlord, a man should fight for his great cause. Is it worth it to waste all your abilities just for a so-called love affair? How would a heartless person understand? DMO Xian's expression was icy cold as his sleeves fluttered and boundless profound rays surged. The black-robed figure cursed in a low voice. Both parties crossed hands once again. The commotion in the tomb grew louder and louder. Intense profound rays broke through the secret chamber and shot straight into the clouds. Yiqing Luo didn't need to think to know. Now it must be God realm or devil region, that group of people with extraordinary abilities. They were heading towards the divine emperor's tomb. Bam! Yiqing Luo felt her body shaking violently. She heard the sound of gravel hitting the ground. Someone had already invaded the inner periphery of the tomb. Invaded the place where her mother's coffin was placed. How could someone find their way here so quickly? Concentrate. Feng Gu bellowed in a low voice. Yiqing Luo's body kept shaking as she forced herself not to be affected by anything else, enduring the scorching flames from the divine phoenix's inheritance. DMO Xian stopped him in time and the black-robed figure had yet to get close to Yiqing Luo, interrupting her from receiving the inheritance. The black-robed figure looked at the young lady who had her eyes closed and had no rejection from the divine emperor's inheritance. That sinister and treacherous face under the black robe started to twist. The black-robed figure's eyes suddenly turned cold as he stared fiercely at Lin Mo Xian's direction. Under the black robe, that pair of icy cold eyes seemed to be gathering a gloomy frost. DMO Xian frowned. Looking at that pair of icy cold eyes, the corners of his eyes raised slightly. He cautiously leaned towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Overlord, do you really think that you can stop me? That black robe's voice was spat out coldly. He suddenly lifted the black robe and flung it upwards. The raging yin qi suddenly burst forth in the tomb chamber, which was on the verge of collapse. It brought along a strong, ferocious, majestic and vigorous energy. The entire tomb was almost overturned. Since I dare to come, then naturally, I am fully prepared. DMO Xian had just moved. That figure who had already taken off his black robe and was dressed in a black outfit was like a poisonous snake as he blocked DMO Xian's way. Following that, the black robe that was flipped over on the ground fluttered even though there was no wind. A deep black profound yin qi with an icy cold murderous intent, wrapped around Yiqing Luo. DMO Xian's pupils contracted as he hurriedly turned around and headed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. He didn't care at all. The black-robed figure was still wrapped around him. The black-robed figure smiled coldly. Venerable Sovereign, the biggest taboo in a battle is to leave one's back to the enemy. How could a dignified venerable sovereign make such a mistake? The black-robed figure raised his palm and struck towards DMO Xian's back. In the meantime, the dense mysterious yin qi fiercely rushed towards the young girl, like a bloody mouth baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, wanting to completely swallow the young girl. The terrifying and cold black light engulfed the young girl. The palm wind which was filled with vigorous and boundless energy fell towards DMO Xian's back. Yiqing Luo's entire body started to shake violently. As the power of the divine phoenix's inheritance washed through his limbs and bones. The moment the man worriedly said Luo's expression changed. The young girl opened her eyes abruptly. Between those long and narrow eyes, the fiery red glow was sparkling brilliantly. That pair of pupils were covered with a blood-red color. That ferocious profound yin qi could not cover the young girl's red eyes. Chapter 51-56. It was the Palace of Darkness. The people from the Palace of Darkness. The Palace of Darkness. Actually came so fast. Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes flashed. She couldn't let the profound yin qi touch her. She couldn't break the divine phoenix's inheritance. This was the only chance. She absolutely couldn't. Absolutely couldn't let her mother down. But that surging profound yin qi was like an arrow leaving the bow, instantly swallowing her face. Yiqing Luo's breath froze. She couldn't evade it. Even if Diamo Xian was attacked by that palm wind, he was still a step too slow. Feng family's lass, Feng family's everything, I'll leave it to you. Suddenly, a light and faintly familiar voice rang beside her ear. Yiqing Luo saw a transparent and illusory figure blocking in front of her. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly constricted, her pink lips trembled, silently spitting out two words, old tomb. The tomb guardian's spiritual body was instantly dispersed by that profound yin qi. In Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes, the only reflection was. It was the tomb guardian before he disappeared. To her, the first and also the last. Smile. And also because of the tomb guardian's obstruction. It made the profound yin qi pause for a few breaths. And it was this moment of pause. Diamo Xian had already reached Yiqing Luo in time. With a wave of his hand, the profound ray surged, lifting that raging profound yin qi. Yiqing Luo's vision fell on that man's dark red thin lips, overflowing with blood. Just like the redness of her eyes. Just now. In order to rush towards her, Diamo Xian disregarded his own safety, allowing that black-robed figure to strike out a palm on his body. Ah, Xian. Her throat was slightly hoarse. She felt as if there was a fire burning her throat. That palm the opponent didn't hold back at all. Diamo Xian also suffered that palm forcefully. Without any protective measures he suffered it all. Just to rush to her side. The tomb guardian died for her. Ah Xian was injured for her. All because of her. If earlier the tomb guardian didn't block in front of her, the current her would probably have been swallowed by the profound yin qi. If earlier Ah Xian didn't break the profound yin qi in time, the current her would probably not survive. It was her incompetence that had harmed them. In Yiqing Luo's pupils, there seemed to be raging waves surging. There was a sudden buzz in her head. The crimson light in his eyes shot out a dazzling light. A powerful rainbow light burst out from his body, and he suddenly dashed away. The cherry blossom bracelet on his wrist shot out a fiery rainbow. The burning sensation on his chest was like the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade surging out of his body. The entire chamber suddenly exploded. The girl sitting cross-legged in front of the coffin was emitting a fiery red glow. At this moment, his aura continued to skyrocket. The tomb has exploded. Is the Emperor of the Divine Emperors coming back to life? Quick, get closer and take a look. In the tomb of the Divine Emperors, there must be many divine artifacts buried with the former Divine Emperors. The tomb of the Divine Emperor has exploded. It exploded. Countless discussions resounded throughout the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The people from the Fiend Domain who had not dared to take even half a step into Devil Destruction Mountain, as well as the people from the outside world, were now gathered around Devil Destruction Mountain. The red glow spread across the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The Divine Phoenix legacy had ended. Yiqing Luo slowly moved her 5 fingers. The red glow on her body slowly dissipated. Finally, it disappeared into the cherry blossom totem on the young girl's forehead. The young girl's figure floated in midair. The red glow lingered, her jet black hair flying. Her peach-red dress fluttered with the wind, making a fluttering sound. Chapter 51-57. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the young lady who was floating in midair. The sky was filled with flaming dark rays, pouring down and covering the entire sky. The entire Demon Destruction Mountain was covered in a layer of red light. It was as if flames were burning the entire Demon Destruction Mountain. That is it the Empress of the Divine Emperors? Is it? Useless Seventh Lady, Lord Dizun, please be gentle. Chapter 51-58. It is indeed you, the person behind the scenes of the gloomy palace. 3. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 51-58. Too bad this power does not belong to you. The young lady's clear voice was filled with extreme coldness, with a hint of ridicule. Her slender fingers flicked and the silver strands shrunk even tighter. The black-robed man's face revealed a pained expression. The young lady's pink lips rose slightly as she smiled indifferently. Do you really think that by stopping me from inheriting the God Emperor's inheritance, you will be able to get my mother's inheritance? She raised her legs slowly and stepped on the man's body. A strong and domineering aura was emitted from her body, like a king who was above the 9 heavens. And the person she was stepping on was merely an ant that could be easily pinched to death. That kind of almighty and unattainable. Too bad. The designated successor is me, and the person who is recognized by the divine phoenix's inheritance is also me. Yiqing Luo laughed softly as the profound rays were as sharp as a sharp blade, falling onto the man's body. And you? Have to pay the price for killing old Mu and injuring Ah Xian. The man let out a muffled groan as he forcefully endured the overwhelming profound light. The silver strands fixed him in place and he had no way to resist, so he could only bear it. You look so pathetic. The young lady muttered sarcastically, I'm afraid you've never been in such a pathetic state before. Palace of Darkness, the mastermind. When the young lady said the last 4 words, that black-robed man's pained expression froze slightly. He gritted his teeth and squeezed out the words, How did you know? My identity? This Devil Extermination Mountain is Palace of Darkness's territory in the Devil region, which means, Palace of Darkness roughly knows the location of the God Emperor's sovereign. But because of the Demon Dragon King's seal, the God Emperor's sovereign's aura was concealed. The mastermind of Palace of Darkness has repeatedly found trouble with me and created so many troubles. Isn't it because they want to obtain the profound flame diagram from me and find the God Emperor's tomb to obtain the God Emperor's inheritance? So, to be able to rush to my mother's tomb in such a short time and attempt to stop me from receiving the inheritance. Other than the mastermind of Palace of Darkness, I can't think of anyone else. Listening to the young lady's patient explanation. Although the man's face was filled with ruthlessness and coldness, one could see that his facial features were regular and handsome. Once again his face twisted. Suddenly, amidst the pain, he laughed coldly. Your analysis sounds pretty good. However, you're wrong about one thing. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I established my secret faction in Devil Destruction Mountain not because I know the location of the Divine Emperor's tomb. Or rather, I have no clue about the Divine Emperor's tomb. He grinned coldly. Otherwise, why would I send so many people to hunt down that pair of impostors who followed the Bone Sovereign? Hearing Secluded Palace's mastermind denying it, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Her analysis, wrong? If the other party did not know the location of the tomb of the Divine Sovereign, how could he possibly find his way here so quickly? Something was definitely wrong. He's right. He doesn't know the location of this emperor's tomb. Suddenly, a slightly weak and extremely ethereal voice rang out leisurely in everyone's ears. When Yiqing Luo heard that voice, she immediately turned around. Amidst the raging flames, she could faintly see a figure floating towards her. On seeing that figure, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. Mother? Chapter 51-59. She originally thought her mother had used up the last of her obsession to complete the transmission to her. After that, just like the Tomb Guardians, disappeared from the world. Because of this, before the God Emperor's power had completely merged with her body, she started to take action against the people behind the secluded palace. Old Tomb's death, Ah Xian's injury, coupled with her mother's disappearance. All of his anger was suppressed in this instant. Now that she saw that her mother was still around, Yiqing Luo's agitation was imaginable. Feng Ji's movement speed wasn't fast. As he floated over neither too fast nor too slow, his voice was brimming with anger and coldness. Because when I built this tomb chamber, it was built to deal with him. She enunciated every word clearly. Feng Gu came to Yiqing Luo's side. That blazing red dress under the dazzling red light seemed illusory and dreamy. As though the next moment, it would merge into the red light, disappearing. This made Yiqing Luo's heart feel unbearably tight. She clenched her slender fingers as she stretched out her hand to support Feng Gu. Her voice sounded a little tight. Mother? However, Feng Gu avoided her touch. Indistinctly, it seemed to brush past an extremely cold chill. Yiqing Luo's hand paused. Mother? Feng Gu gave her a gentle smile, then her vision turned towards the black-robed man. That pair of beautiful eyes were filled with resentment and hatred which others couldn't understand. She congealed that familiar yet unfamiliar face as though it was a lifetime ago. No. It was indeed a lifetime ago. After all, yin and yang were separated by 10,000 years. She chuckled softly. That faint cold laughter had a chill which made one's scalp go numb. Huang Wuyo. You didn't expect this, right? This empress not only schemed against you 10,000 years ago, today, I still schemed against you. She said every word clearly with emphasis on her words. The black-robed man stared at that illusory figure without blinking, as fury surged in his eyes. Hearing Feng Ji's ridicule, he gritted his teeth, but before he opened his mouth, he laughed out loudly. Schemed against this seat? Using your life to plot against me? It's a pity, you calculated everything, but you didn't calculate that after 10,000 years, the daughter you've always been protecting, in other words, my own daughter, will personally undo the seal that you, the mother, personally laid down. After he finished speaking, he burst into laughter. The silver threads wrapped around his body tightened in an instant. He only let out a muffled groan and took a few heavy breaths. But as he coughed, he laughed incessantly. Shut up. Feng Ji's face darkened and her beautiful eyes turned sharp. What right do you have to say that? Luo is my daughter, my only daughter. She took a deep breath and tried her best to maintain her trembling spirit body. Huang, don't be too happy. 10,000 years ago I was able to seal you. 10,000 years later, my daughter, the one who will inherit the royal bloodline of the divine emperor, my daughter, will definitely seal you again. Or even, kill you. Feng Gu spat out the last 3 words one by one. The black-robed man who was addressed as Huang heard Feng Ji's words, but there wasn't a single trace of panic on his face. Instead his lips curled upwards, that pair of sinister eyes, which seemed to be filled with all the evil in the world, looked towards Yiqing Luo with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Following that he laughed, but she is also my daughter. A daughter who kills her father will be punished. Chapter 5160. Are you even fit to be called father? Feng Ji's voice was trembling, her eyes seemed to be burning with a scarlet-red glow. Huang, you're not qualified. Not qualified to call me father. The conversation between the two fell into Yiqing Luo's ears. Like a sudden clap of thunder, Yiqing Luo's mind went into a daze. Biological daughter? Fa father? The mastermind of the secluded palace, that man called Huang. Was it her father? The man who had deceived her mother and schemed everything, just to dig open her heart and take away the divine phoenix profound heart jade. That man. She must have heard wrongly, right? How could this be possible? Yiqing Luo's breathing stagnated, unable to regain her senses from Huang and Feng Ji's conversation. Because she knew that she didn't hear wrongly. She also knew that they weren't joking. And she knew that there were actually many things that could be traced. That was why she was in such a daze. That was the mastermind of the secluded palace who killed people like flax, played with people's hearts, created chaos and attempted to dominate various realms. She actually had such a relationship with him. Yiqing Luo. Huang suddenly shouted at Yiqing Luo. That sinister face which was covered with a haze suddenly curled up his lips towards Yiqing Luo. No matter if Gur admits it or not, this seed is your biological father, that is an indisputable fact. Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold as she looked at Yiqing Luo. He could use this sinister and strange emphasis to call out the 2 words Gu that he had affectionately called her 10,000 years ago. Feng Gu was indeed so angry because of this form of address in his words. So what if I'm your biological father? Yiqing Luo's expression on her face as her voice became colder. She took a step forward, blocking in front of Feng Gu and also blocking Huang disgusting gaze. Other than snatching the thing that mother left me, other than playing with the hearts of my brothers, other than wanting my life, what other feelings do you have for me? She scoffed lightly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Mother is right, what right do you have to lick your face in front of me? You're my father? Her fingertips moved again. The bright silver threads shone brightly, as it entangled Huang even tighter. The razor-sharp silver threads pierced into Huang flesh, all the way to his bones. That kind of extreme pain could not be described with words. Regardless of whether what you said is true or false, just based on what you've done, I won't admit it. Yiqing Luo was very calm, her long and narrow eyes shot out a few rays of light. Even if it is for mother's revenge, I will not let you get what you want. I will not let you have the chance to hurt me and my friends by my side. As she spoke, her tone became heavier and sharper. She tightened her fingers. The black-clothed man in the silver threads didn't even have the chance to scream. Has already dissipated in the river of silver threads vaguely. He seemed to be able to see beads of blood dripping from the silver thread. It settled? The mastermind of the Dark Shadow Palace was taken care of? The onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. The interpersonal relationships nowadays were a little complicated. The girl who walked out of the tomb of the Divine Emperor was so cold-blooded and heartless. Some people exclaimed in surprise while others disagreed. But the crowd's thoughts didn't affect Yiqing Luo. The current Yiqing Luo was frowning tightly as she searched the surroundings vigilantly. Instinct told her. Things absolutely couldn't be settled so quickly. Chapter 5161. The mastermind of the secluded palace was sinister and cunning. Since the start of Nirvana Realm they had been fighting with her till now. How was it possible that he died so easily? Furthermore, earlier when she used the glower flame fan's silver threads to chop him apart, she didn't feel the feeling of killing Huang Wuyo. Yiqing Luo's brows drooped slightly as she stared at the glower flame fan on her fingertips, pondering over the peculiarity. It's no use. Feng Ji's weak voice sounded a little strained. That's not Huang Wuyo's real body. Even if he's dismembered, Huang Wuyo is still alive. Mother. Yiqing Luo kept her thoughts as she looked at Feng Gu worriedly, stretching out her hand to support her. Feng Gu avoided her hand once again as her pale lips curled upwards. That smile was gentle and filled with love towards her. But it was also mixed with helplessness. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened fiercely. Suddenly she stretched out her hand and held Feng Ji's hand. The moment their skin touched, a wave of ice, like a 1,000-year-old frost, pierced into her body. Her entire body was frozen on the spot. That bone-piercing coldness seemed to turn her into an ice sculpture. Very quickly, Feng Gu reacted and swiftly retreated as her tone was filled with worry. Luo, are you all right? She separated from Feng Gu. The coldness that felt like it was going to pierce into his internal organs gradually subsided. But the coldness in her body was unable to dissipate. She staggered a few steps backwards. Luckily Dmo Xian supported her from behind in time. Yiqing Luo leaned against the man's arms as her pair of charming eyes stared blankly at Feng Gu, who was about to blend into the red glow. Her voice trembled slightly. Mother, you? What's the matter? When she asked this question, Yiqing Luo already had an answer in her heart. No wonder her mother didn't allow her to touch him. Because her mother now, maintaining her current spiritual form to converse with her was already very taxing. There was no way to maintain her own temperature. Hugging her normally, Yiqing Luo's heart was like thousands of silver needles, pricking her needle by needle. Mother is all right. Feng Gu smiled gently and continued, Mother doesn't have much time left. Listen to me carefully. Yiqing Luo stopped the choking in her throat as she concentrated her attention on Feng Gu. Feng Gu, 10,000 years ago I sensed Huang Wuyo's ambition. In order to protect you and send you to a brand new world without war, I exhausted my own strength to seal Huang Wuyo in the demon dragon's lair in the demon domain. I know that I don't have much time left, so when I decided to seal Huang Wuyo, I set up my grave here. It's not that Huang Wuyo knew the location of my tomb, so he established the power of the Palace of Darkness here. It's just that Mother wanted to suppress him and also to prevent him from discovering my true burial place. The most dangerous place was also the safest place. Even if Huang Wuyo racked his brains, he would not be able to figure it out. He had been searching for the whereabouts of the Divine Emperor's tomb. It was right in the place where he was sealed. Huang Wuyo's real body is still sealed under the demon dragon's lair. Earlier Huang Wuyo was merely an incarnation of a strand of his consciousness. When Feng Gu said this, her eyes revealed some seriousness and solemnity as she looked at Yiqing Luo. Luo, based on his current strength, I'm guessing his seal is going to be broken soon. Once he breaks the seal and appears, this strange world will probably fall into an abyss of suffering again. She took a deep breath as her gaze gradually turned resolute and revealed some traces of remorse. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Feng Ji's eyes turned even redder as her gaze turned towards the man behind Yiqing Luo, who had been supporting Yiqing Luo's waist with one hand, standing upright. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Dizun, she said, her voice a little heavy. Dmo Xian's expression was respectful as he nodded slightly. Just call me Mo Xian, mother. When he spat out the last word in an extremely natural manner, Yiqing Luo was stunned for a moment. You're calling me mother, just like that? She wasn't married yet. This man. Really thick-skinned. Yiqing Luo was cursing in her heart, but her face was burning hot. Chapter 5163. Feng Gu was stunned for a moment before she smiled. I believe in your sincerity towards Luo, for the rest of my life. I will entrust this daughter of mine to you. Her smile seemed as though it would dissipate with the wind at any time. Yiqing Luo's heart vaguely felt something. Her fair fingers clenched Nan Rao's arm tightly as she suppressed her emotions. Dmo Xian's expression was respectful and serious as he gave a slight bow towards Feng Gu. Mother, don't worry. Love her, protect her, pamper her, love her. This is what I will use my entire life to do. This was probably the first time in Dmo Xian's life that he was so respectful towards someone. That piercingly cold aura which belonged to an overlord was completely concealed. Dmo Xian was just an ordinary son-in-law, a son-in-law who was being tested by his future mother-in-law. Feng Gu smiled satisfactorily as she nodded. This daughter of mine is much luckier than me. I believe that you will do your best to fulfill the vow you have made. Dmo Xian's gaze was resolute. Yes. Sister. Suddenly, a trembling voice was heard from not too far away. Not too far away, a figure was seen rushing over speedily. That person's robe was in a mess and his head of black hair was blown into a mess by the strong wind. He rushed over and stopped 3 steps away from Feng Gu. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Feng Gu without blinking as he panted heavily. When Feng Gu heard this voice, the smile on her face paused for a moment. Her line of sight fell onto Na Rao bit by bit. That face which was similar to hers was extremely agitated at this moment. Feng Gu smiled slightly. Xiong, you've grown up. She seemed to want to stretch out her hand to caress Feng Liqiong's head. But thinking of her current physique, she quickly withdrew her hand. Feng Liqiong's eyes widened as she stared at Feng Gu as her throat tightened uncomfortably. Feng Gu gave her an extremely gentle smile. For so many years, it's all thanks to Qiong for carrying the burden of the Feng family, and also for the sins that sister had committed. She smiled extremely gently. Luckily there's Qiong. You will always be sister's best brother. Feng Liqiong opened her mouth and spat out a word bitterly. No, he didn't. He was not a good younger brother. Feng Ji's death was a huge blow to him, and all his thoughts were distorted. Actually, he had never blamed his sister. Never blamed her because of love, regardless of holding. He just wanted to find an excuse to keep himself going. Persevere. I will protect my sister, the hand that my sister wants to protect. But even so, he had done a lot of wrong things. He didn't have the qualifications to receive his sister's praise. Yes, it's all thanks to uncle that Feng family and grandfather can survive until today. Yiqing Luo's tone was full of sincerity. Uncle, he really worships mother. Feng Ji's smile became even more gentle, and the way she looked at Feng Liqiong also became a little warmer. She seemed to be caressing Feng Liqiong's head through the air. Qiong, from now on, please take care of the Feng family and Luo. You're the eldest son of the Feng family, the pillar of the Feng family. Sis. Feng Liqiong said in a hoarse voice, her eyes welling up with tears. His heart was full of words, but at this moment he could not say them. A hand was placed on his back. Feng family's patriarch slowly raised his head, looking at this daughter who he had always doted on, loved, but because of a moment of wrong love, had passed away 10,000 years ago. Chapter 5164. That pair of old eyes which had experienced hardships couldn't help but burst into tears. Father? When she saw Patriarch Feng, the expression on Feng Ji's face couldn't hold it in anymore. She cried softly and then knelt down on the ground. Father? I'm unfilial. Patriarch Feng shut his eyes hard. The once all-powerful old man suppressed the sourness in his eyes and made his voice calm and dignified. Everything is over, don't mention it again. However, his trembling voice still revealed his agitation at this moment. Patriarch Feng looked at the spiritual body which seemed like it would dissipate when the wind blew, and sighed softly. After that, he looked at Yiqing Luo. Luo has already accepted the God Emperor's inheritance? Yes, Luo is the appointed successor to the God Emperor. Feng Ji's gaze gently swept over the obvious cherry blossom totem on Yiqing Luo's forehead. That was the symbol of the God Emperor. Since Yiqing Luo was born, there was this mark on her forehead. This was the appointed future God Emperor. Luo. Patriarch Feng's voice suddenly became dignified, his tone heavy. And that call also spread to the surroundings through the profound energy. The noisy crowd quietened down at this moment. Patriarch Feng continued, you have already received the God Emperor's inheritance from today onwards. You are the new God Emperor of the God Emperor, you have to shoulder the heavy burden of the God realm. understand? Yiqing Luo knew. This was her grandfather's way of announcing her current status to everyone. The God Emperor of the God Emperor's inheritance. That was the most orthodox God Emperor of the God Emperor. All the people in the God realm must accept the God Emperor of the God Emperor willingly. When this was said, the God realm was in an uproar. Most of the forces in the God realm had been dominated by the Nether Palace. Even if Feng Liqiong had eliminated many hidden forces. But there were still a lot of them left. When this was said, it immediately attracted the resistance of many God realm cultivators. Patriarch Feng sneered and flicked his sleeves, facing the dense crowd in front. His voice was dignified and cold. Not convinced? Who among you can get the God Emperor's inheritance and sit firmly on the God Emperor's position? The Emperor of the former Xuanhuan has disappeared for tens of thousands of years, and your Feng family created an acting Xuanhuan. To put it bluntly, you just want to occupy the position of Xuanhuan and refuse to let go. What? Only the person who obtained the Divine Emperor's inheritance can inherit the Divine Emperor's throne? How do we know that she really got the Divine Emperor's inheritance? Countless people clamored. Bang! A majestic, profound energy suddenly exploded in the middle of the crowd. The group of people who were still clamoring immediately began to scream. The illusory red spiritual body slowly floated into the air and looked down at the people below. That gentleness towards Yiqing Luo and the Feng family members had vanished. That was the majesty that belonged to the superior, the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. The hurricane blew against her flame-like red robe. Feng Ji's brows were cold and his words were ruthless. What's wrong with my daughter inheriting the throne? If anyone is dissatisfied, feel free to come and find this emperor. The might of a divine emperor spread throughout the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The pressure was so great that everyone was almost unable to breathe. Yiqing Luo's heart felt like it was being pricked by needles, and she wanted to go forward to stop Feng Ge. Her slender waist was held tightly by Dmo Xian. He lowered his eyes and his voice was gentle and tender. She knows she doesn't have much time left. She only wants to use the remaining time to help you clear the obstacles. Even if you stop her now, it's useless. But, if this goes on, Mother will only exhaust all her energy and completely disappear from this world. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.